Hey guys, it's Halsey Schider with the Helicopter Podcast, and I can't believe I'm recording this episode right now, but this is my end of year wrap up. Like, it's done. Like, the new year is less than 2 weeks away as I record this episode. I think Christmas is about 8 days away. Very excited. I love this time of year. I've always been a holiday type of guy. So even though I'm battling a little bit of a cold right now, it's been kind of a fun morning as I kind of reviewed this past year, looked through all the different episodes, and I selected 4 episodes that stood out to me that kind of topped 2024. And I thought it would be fun if I use this episode to introduce that episode, talk a little bit about 4 episodes specifically, and then we can play a 15-minute clip or so of that episode. And then if you want more, you can go and check out the entire episode. Of course, first and foremost, thank you to MHM Publishing and the entire Vertical HeliCASTS family. This is, I think, officially like first full year of doing the Vertical HeliCASTS platform. And man, I couldn't be more fired up. We had in-person podcasting from HAI, which is now going to be rebranded as VAI. We had in-person podcasting at European Rotors. We've had some incredible guests because of the network that Vertical Magazine has. And we've had incredible mashups with our other podcasters, John Gray and Jack Shanley from the Hangar Z podcast, Jason Quinn, of course, from The Real Rescue. And I know that Vertical is so excited to be launching this year, the Vertical MRO with Val. So just so much exciting things that happened. And look, 2025 is looking brighter than ever. We're going to be in-person podcasting at VAI, the first ever Verticon this year in Dallas. And we're just going to continue to grow and do what we can to provide amazing content. And to you, the listeners, man, thank you guys so much. I started this podcast, as I've said many times, with this idea that probably no one would listen. Maybe my mom would. And man, I was wrong. You guys listen. You guys like it. You guys reach out. You provide me feedback. You engage with me on social media. I've made friends. I've made legitimate friends through this podcast. And so to you, the audience, thank you so much. So this year, episode number 57, which was, I think, released on January 2nd of 2024, so just about a year ago. Man, that was a real awesome way to start 2024. That was with Kevin LaRosa. Just as a quick reminder, Kevin is an aerial coordinator in Hollywood. He's also a stunt pilot. If you look up Kevin LaRosa and you look up his IMDb, you'll see that he's been part of so many TV and movies that we all love. Most recently, of course, and talked about was the Top Gun Maverick, and we talked a lot about that during this episode. Kevin is just a superior dude. He's a generational pilot there in Hollywood. His dad started doing it, and he's just growing on it. And he's just doing some incredible things. So take a listen to this clip where Kevin tells us a little bit more about what he does as an aerial coordinator and also his mindset towards safety. Keep in mind, the work that he does can be dangerous, and there has to be so much coordination. So to hear from him directly what it was all about, or what he's all about regarding safety, was awesome. So enjoy this little clip here.
I think of myself as I'm going to say just a pilot, just an aviator, right? I legitimately just love flying. And I think what people see is they see a guy that's just so wound up in his profession. Like I am a little crazy for it. I literally study my movie manual. I study the rigs as they pertain to me. I study RFMs. I mean, I fly a lot of different aircraft too, which I enjoy. But what we lack when that happens is proficiency in a single type, right? So if you're flying an A-Star every single day, specific model of A-Star, you are just king of that helicopter. You know every sound it makes, every nook and cranny, every number. If you're flying 10 aircraft, a lot, it gets very difficult. And one thing, my standard operating procedure before I do a job in any aircraft, if I'm going to fly a Huey next week, I'm going to be in the RFM and I'm going to be studying. Doesn't matter how many hours I have in the machine. Um, it's proficiency and knowing that aircraft, so it's an extension of your body, so that you can also focus, multitask on the filmmaking aspect, right? So I think like what you said, you look up to me. I don't see myself that way. I just love doing this, and I love going to airports, and I love talking about it, and I love when people ask me, hey, how do you get into that thing? I was very lucky. I kind of got brought up into it in a family, so that's the who you know side of it. But trust me, I've seen guys lateral into this industry all the time. In fact, I'm bringing in an apprentice right now to that I think is just a great pilot and has the right personality, and I want to build him into somebody that's part of our team. So for those of you that think the industry is really cool, trust me, it is super cool. And if it's something you want, in this great country, I believe anything you can get your hands on, as long as you put your head down and work hard, you're going to have it. So that's my philosophy.
Yeah, we've talked a lot about that on the podcast actually, and it's not always about like what you know or if you're even the best pilot, but it's about your personality. It's about, are you willing to learn? Are you willing to do things on the ground to learn the operation from the ground up, so to speak? What is the attitude that you bring to the office and your coworkers every day? We talk about that so much on the podcast, and I think it's so important because whether someone wants to get into what you're doing or they want to get into utility or medical, whatever type of flying that they're interested in, it's often more about like the person that you are and being someone that people actually want to work with.
Man, Halsey, I can't agree with you more. I mean, when we talk about like adding people to our team, it's like 50% skill. You got to be good at what you do. And then it's like the other half is all personality, because we want to work with cool people. If you're on the road, you're traveling with somebody, you need to trust them. They need to be predictable. I'll tell you that my personality traits are ever evolving. Um, who I am today as an aviator is different than who I was 5 years ago. It's different who I was 10 years ago. And that will continue evolving. One thing I will say, it's so easy in this industry, to get an ego. But we all have egos, right? We're pilots, whatever, A-type personalities. We all have egos, and that's fine, because we need to be captains and we need to be commanders of our aircraft. It's very difficult to check your ego, and I'm learning more about that every single day. We do these very cool things that get a lot of attention. I probably don't post as much as I should on social media of the stuff we do. Um, I'll tell you this. I worked with two amazing teams in the last year and a half. One was the United States Navy Blue Angels, and the others was the United States Air Force Thunderbirds. And on both of these occasions, separate occasions, I was selected to be a helicopter pilot to film their demonstrations. These are projects that we're going to see come out this year. It's the first time a civilian helicopter, which was an Airbus H-125, was allowed to be within the formation during the demo
Wow.
with zero lateral, like zero restrictions on how close I can get. Talk about trust. And that took a buildup, right? It wasn't, we just didn't go diving into that. It was very rewarding to do that job. It was very difficult to do that job. I had to memorize the routines and where I needed to be and how to create really cool camera movements so we can just showcase these teams in a different way. But I will tell you, what I took away as a human being from both of those pinnacle like professions, those teams, those people together is insane. One thing I'll say is, there's these personality traits which they look for, and now I've adopted that. This accountable, predictable, professional, and I love this one, an aggressive sense of humility. Okay, we struggle with this as aviators. I struggle with this as an aviator. But I can tell you it's something that we actually include in our briefing now. Like, we strive for this. And here's what I can tell anybody listening to this. And by the way, I am not the best pilot on this podcast. I'm trying to be the best pilot I could be. I'm competing with myself. So by any means, I don't want anyone listening to this to think Kevin thinks he's better than anybody. That's not the case. But I will share with what I learned. And I was never a CFI, but it's fun when we learn about ourselves and teach other people about our mistakes. The aggressive sense of humility means you can land from any mission, I don't care if you're a Part 135 pilot, you're a news helicopter pilot, maybe you're a CFI, and you can sit in front of the people that were part of that mission. So your other crew members or the talent or whatever. Of course, maybe not the passengers on a 135 flight, but maybe your colleagues when you get back to base and go, you know what? I screwed this up today. Or I almost forgot to do this. Or I didn't plan my fuel. I landed with the fuel light on and I did not plan for that. When we talk about the things we did wrong, let me tell you, it just checks a whole different level inside. When we bury those, right? When it's embarrassing, and that's normal. How in front of our peers when we make mistakes, we don't really want to advertise those or put the light on those. When you get to a point, and I'm still working on this, where you could put the light on that and be like, raise your hand, and be like, oh my God, I screwed this up. I'm sorry about that. I guess I
All
should
good.
mute my phone. I owe everybody a beer now. Um, when you can sit down in a debriefing, raise your hand and go, I almost killed you, or I screwed this up. That is the excellence that we want to obtain. And I learned that from the Blues and the Thunderbirds because every single mission, they're going, man, last flight, I screwed this up. On this flight, I'm going to nail it. So it's just about that personal growth, personal development. And that's something that I'm really passionate about these days. If I can go just a little deeper on what you just said, when I was a kid, a really, really young kid, and I was watching my dad be this really well known film pilot. That was my dream. And my dream was to be the world's best aerial coordinator and motion picture stunt pilot, the world's biggest, best. That was my dream as a kid. Um, some years later, when I was a teenager, my dad had a very bad accident in a helicopter, and I was on set to see it. And most people would think that, watching something like that happen to your father would deter you from the industry or it would make you afraid of the industry. And honestly, I thought, I saw my life flash from as if I was going to lose my dad, but he survived it and he was back in the seat, I think 9 months later, which was pretty crazy.
Wow.
After that accident, my whole philosophy changed. I didn't want to be the best anymore. I wanted to be the best and the safest, right? Because 1 second of what we do can change the whole outcome of the flight. It's inherently risky, any aviation job, right?
Everything is. Yeah,
So,
everything in this business.
exactly. So after that, my whole philosophy changed, right? It never used to include safety. It was just I wanted to be the best, the biggest and the best. Now it was like, well, our lives are in where other people's lives are in our hand. Well, then I got to a point later in my life where it changed again. And this was my own personal development. I had an over torque and an A star. No big deal. No parts got thrown away. It was a minor over torque event, but that was really embarrassing for me. And it happened in association on a film set. And it wasn't that there was an overtake. No big deal. It was how I handled it because I was embarrassed about it. Right. So that was a personal development thing on myself. Well, looking back on that, 6, 7 years ago, again, my philosophy has changed. I feel like I was trying to be the best and the safest, but I was competing with my colleagues, those people around me, right? Now I'm competing with me. I want to be the best that I could be. I don't care. I have blinders on, and all I want is to be the best that I can be and the safest I can be. And I feel like that's put a lot more focus on myself personally of how good of a pilot, how precise I can be, and how safe I can be. So, same goal, but I would say different levels of it have changed over the years.
Well, I think it's really important for all of us as more seasoned pilots. Obviously, you and I are still on the excuse me, on the younger end, but we have a lot of flight time, a lot of flight experience, some bit of a platform, and I can honestly say, and I'm sure you probably don't remember, but when I started talking to you at Expo last year, and I'm oh, Top Gun and blah blah blah, you just started talking about safety. Like literally, you just started talking about what you're trying to do in the industry to make it safer. And Mike, obviously our mutual friend, has talked a lot about that in regards to you and kind of what you're doing within your industry to kind of lead from the top, right? And set a precedence of safety because you're exactly right. It takes one little mess up, one lapse in judgment to really have a catastrophic event. And so I think it's really cool. And I'm not sure about your industry, but I'm guessing like most helicopter industries, as time has gone on, say when your dad and Alan were pioneering all this, the industry that they were in is probably completely different now, right? I would have to say there's probably been a lot of measures that has made it safer.
I think you're absolutely right, and really a testament to the production studios, the safety departments that they've stood up, and the individuals that they've hired to run their safety departments are really on it. Halsey, when I get as an independent contractor, when a studio like Paramount or Warner Brothers hires me or any of my colleagues, we become an employee of theirs. We wear their hat, and we become almost a departmental head for a specific production. So if we're making an aviation movie, and I'm hired as the aerial coordinator, I am now hired as an employee of production to represent them, watch out for their interest, protect individuals, to help put together the sequence. Now that's the safety side. And then from a creative standpoint, I want as much practical, real flying on camera as possible because that's my love. I want to make it as dynamic and as amazing as we could possibly make it to the extent that we don't hurt anybody. I developed a little saying that I love, and I think it's kind of what our core existence as an aerial coordinator would be. And that is this: our job is, well, in the quite simplest terms, we turn storyboards into reality, we turn dreams into real flying. But our job is to de-risk every single shot to the fullest extent possible, to which we can still get it done and nobody gets hurt. Everybody gets to go home at the end of the day. And at the same time, make that shot as dynamic and as amazing as it could possibly be. Right? So that's really our core existence. We're going to try to make somebody's dream, somebody's storyboard, somebody's previs into a reality. We're not going to break any regulations. We're not going to violate anything. Our job is to go out there and make that. We're just going to get the best shot we can get, but everybody needs to go home. We're not getting shot at. We're not saving any lives. We're making pretty pictures. It just happens we make really cool, pretty pictures. But there's no excuse for lapsing on safety. I got to give a shout out to, there's so many great professions in the helicopter industry, and they're so methodical with checklists and safety and SMS, and it's, the oil industry, and, even the news industry has come far. A lot of the news media companies, medical industry. I love all the things I got to witness when I did a lot of those jobs. I feel like I'm going back in time and grabbing some of those policies and bringing them into what I call motion picture aviation. Just because I have a profound interest in doing this until the doctor says I'm going to lose my medical, hopefully when I'm 65 or 70. I want to die in a warm bed next to my kids. I don't want to die doing the job I love. I want to promote others around me, build teams, and do this for the rest of my life. And to do that, we have to be safe.
Yeah, no, I mean, safety it's kind of a cliche word sometimes in the industry, but because we're always talking about it, but we as a collective whole, as an industry, we owe it to ourselves. We owe it to our families. We owe it to our kids, our wives, our parents, our friends. We owe it to our colleagues. We're taking passengers, whether you're taking a med crew or you're taking, passengers, or you're taking actors, whatever it may be. We all have to have the same forward momentum of, hey, we need to do what we can do. And I think it's great that you're taking positives from the industries that you've experienced. The SMS side, air medical, 20 years ago versus today's. I mean, night and day, right? Air medical used to be like a dangerous, a lot of pilots lost their lives. And now it's probably one of the safer industries within the helicopter world. So it's really awesome that you have that dedication. And I think with you having a bit of a platform, I think that it's really important and awesome to hear that your commitment to not only being the safest pilot you can be, not always the best, but the safest is, something that hopefully younger pilots that are still kind of figuring out the ego side of flying, because let me tell you, I don't even think I'm like a very egotistical person, but there's something about it when you're flying an aircraft, right? And yeah, you make a mistake, you do this, it's like you feel that ego come in.
Yeah,
or
absolutely.
You get the mission, hey, I got to go and save this person's life, doing it, whatever it may be. And so I think it's great that from your perspective, you're kind of leading from that top down.
We know you love helicopters. That's why you're here. But are you ready to make it a career? Hillsboro Heli Academy has been making dreams of flying helicopters come true since 1980. Visit us at flyhaa.com and dream big.
All right, guys. So I hope you enjoyed that little excerpt from Kevin LaRosa. Again, I hope to have Kevin on. In fact, I need to reach out to Kevin and see if I can come and do some flying with him down in California and maybe do some in-person podcasting or in helicopter podcasting. It would just be incredible. The next episode that I'm highlighting, and this was actually pretty early on in January as well. It just released a few weeks after the Kevin LaRosa episode. It's episode number 60 with Aaron Fitzgerald. If you're unfamiliar with who Aaron is actually the Red Bull pilot. So he flies the BO 105 for Red Bull. He's doing the aerobatics, doing some really cool things. I saw some pretty awesome content this year from Aaron, whether he was doing some cool air show flying or doing some other stunts with Red Bull. And Aaron has a very fascinating past, very accomplished helicopter pilot. And for me, this episode was so exciting because it's such a unique job that he has. Like, how did he get there? How does that happen? How do you end up being the Red Bull helicopter pilot? So in this excerpt, we talk about the 105 specifically and what makes it so good for aerobatics. And then Aaron just shares a little bit more about his journey. Again, if you want to listen to the entire episode, check out episode number 60 with Aaron Fitzgerald. But for now, enjoy this clip.
And then, so the way it started, it's actually kind of funny. So Blackie Schwartz was the chief pilot of the helicopter chief pilot for Red Bull worldwide, and he's a great guy, and he's an aerobatic performer as well. And he came over to the States and wanted to practice. And what I now know is that this was like my shakeout flight to see if I could handle it and not throw up. He says, "Hey, Aaron, you want to come with me? I'm going to go practice. I'm going to go do my routine. You can jump in and ride with me." So I said, "Great." And I went and rode with him, and he did his full aerobatic sequence 3 times. Which is a lot for a newbie, you know. I'm kind of sweating and everything, but I didn't get sick. I was all good. And he said, "Okay, we're going to teach you how to do a loop right now." So here we go. So we did a loop together, and the first one was perfect. And then not because I'm good, because it was totally random. But anyway, he goes, "Okay, that was good. So do another one." So I do the second loop and just completely botched it, like falling out of the sky upside down. And I'm laughing because I knew he could fix it, but we're literally descending upside down. Ugh. And he kind of told me what I was doing wrong, and we tried it again. I think we either did 3 or 4. I can't remember 100%, but let's say it was 4. So after we finished doing those, he says, "Okay, we're out of fuel. We got to get back, and I got to catch my flight back home to Austria. So tomorrow, take the helicopter out and go practice on your own." I was like, after 4 loops, okay. So anyway, that's what I did. I went out the next day and talked myself into it. I was
Wow.
a little nervous, as you can imagine, but obviously it all worked out. And I did many, many, many loops and got way better at that. And then after I had done a bunch of those for a few months, then they knew that I was ready to go for advanced aerobatic training. And then that's when I went with Reiner, and we did a couple of week-long schools where he really, really got into aerobatic instruction with me, and we got lots more complicated and complex and did all the maneuvers we do today. And I trained at the same time with Mirko Flame and Felix Baumgartner. So Felix is the one that did the big skydive, and then Mirko Flame came in at the same time as I did, but now he's the chief pilot for Red Bull worldwide. So now he's my boss. My teammate and my boss. Yeah.
That's incredible. So from doing those first few loops, how long was it from that point to, flying your first air show? And what was that experience like for you, performing in a helicopter in front of a ton of people?
Let's see. So I took over in January of 2016. And for the first year, we pretty much just did maintenance, tore the helicopters completely down and zeroed everything out and rebuilt them and all that. And then the following year, 2017, was kind of a training and practice year. And then my first air show season was 2018. And my first show was at Luke Air Force Base, and the crowd that day was about 250 to 350,000 people, somewhere in that neighborhood. And I was used to performing under pressure, but not in front of that many eyeballs. Right? We'd been doing stunts. I do stuff on camera, or whatever, but having a big crowd is different. But to answer the question, it's funny. You feel a little bit nervous beforehand, when you're standing around near the helicopter waiting to go, that in the beginning, the first few shows, that was horrible because I was just racked with nerves, and I didn't want to screw up, and I didn't want to do a bad job. And Red Bull had invested all this money and trust in me, so I felt a lot of pressure, and I could feel it physically. But then as soon as you get in the helicopter and put seatbelts on, start up the engines, then you're just working, and when you're doing the show, you're so focused on the show line and airspeeds, altitudes, power settings, rate of rotation, everything that you normally keep track of, plus the aerobatic side of it. You're so busy, you don't even notice the crowd. You forget that there's people watching you until you're all done and you come down and face the crowd, and then you look out and go, whoa, that's a lot of people.
Whoa.
But when you're actually doing the display, you don't think about the crowd at all. Even then, even in the beginning when I was nervous, when you're actually doing it, you don't think about it. And now I don't really think about it at all. I still get a little nervous, but instead of it being an hour of total nervousness, now it's 5 minutes of me just kind of going, all right, here we go. Time to do what we do.
Yeah, it's always, I would expect always to have like a little nerves. I think we have a thought, or guys like myself might have an idea of like what it means to be the pilot for Red Bull. But what is like the day in the life? Obviously a very active air show circuit, I'm assuming, probably a lot of other appearances and things like that. What does your year look like flying for Red Bull?
Well, right now we're in the off season, which is why I'm wearing this ridiculous mustache. But the season starts in about March and goes through usually November or so. And we don't do an air show every weekend, but for a while in the spring, and they're kind of back to back, and then it tapers off in the summer and then gets busy again in the fall. So during air show season, we generally travel on Wednesday or Thursday into the show city. So I can back up a little bit. I fly on the airlines to the city, and then I have a teammate. Yeah, we have a teammate, Stan Gray, who actually flies the helicopter all over the country. So we'll pre-position one at the beginning of the season in Shreveport, Louisiana, which if you look at the map, it's very central in the United States. So everything basically east of the Rockies is we service with that helicopter. So he flies it out there in the beginning of the season, and then each show week he flies it by airline to Shreveport, picks it up, goes to wherever we're going. We meet up there, and then the show's Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and then Monday I travel home. And there are a lot of other Red Bull events and projects that we do. So sometimes, like for instance, the last air show we did this season, I flew out to Florida on the Sunday before the show, and then we did some testing for a stunt that we have coming up, and then we did some VIP rides. For one of them was our new sponsored sprinter, Arian Knighton, who's going to run in the Paris Olympics. So I got to fly with him. I got to fly with Caroline Marks, the world surfing champion. So you have, there are work days, like I got to show up and go fly, but I get to fly with some of the coolest, most interesting people in the world, and it's fun to show them helicopter aerobatics and share what we do with athletes of different disciplines and people that come with their own completely separate audience, and they don't know anything about aviation. So it's fun to kind of maybe plant that seed, or maybe show people a little bit of what we know. Helicopters, it's fun to be the representative of the helicopter world to the greater aviation world, and also to the rest of the world outside of aviation. It's really fun to kind of have that voice, and I'm really enjoying it.
And you're doing routines 3 or 4 days in a row, or maybe even, like you said, some promo flights and promotional flights leading up to it. I've always imagined that flying aerobatics, whether you're flying in an airplane or in a helicopter, in your case, it has to be fairly physically taxing. It's almost, I would say that you're an athlete by just what your body has to go through. Did that take a while to kind of build up that stamina, or are you just pretty healthy guy in general and it was easier?
I have been a healthy guy just because I enjoy, working out. I like being in shape. So I think that helps. And technically I am an athlete. That's what it says on my contract, even though I don't think of myself that way.
As an athlete, for sure.
But on the helicopter side, the G load and the rate of rotation isn't such that you need to be in some kind of crazy physical condition. It helps, and it helps to do it a lot because it keeps you accustomed to it. The G loads aren't that significant. So in a normal display, I'll pull maybe 3 Gs positive, anywhere from 2.6 to 3 if I'm really pulling hard on the bottom of a split S, that's about 3 Gs, which is nothing compared to what the airplane guys pull. And then on the negative side, I go to about a quarter of a negative G. So just past 0, just when you're starting to go into your seat belts, there is about what we do. I've taken it farther in practice and in training with Reiner. So I know the helicopter will do much more than that. And what we do in the display is well within the aerodynamic capability of the helicopter, well within the envelope for sure. But physically, it's not really that tough in terms of, straining against Gs, because they're just, 3 Gs isn't that big of a deal.
Sure.
But the rotation, you do have to stay accustomed to that, or you will, if you don't do aerobatics for a month or two and you go out and start doing rolls and loops, you're going to get dizzy and you're going to feel a little clammy. But like the airplane guys, for instance, we have 2 aerobatic airplane pilots in the States. Kevin Coleman and Kirby Chambliss, those guys routinely pull 9+, 10+ Gs, and that is very physically demanding. That's what you're talking about. Those guys, that's an athletic performance for sure. They work really, really hard in the cockpit, straining against Gs, both positive and negative, but not so much in the helicopters, not quite that intense.
Have you ever rode with one of those guys before?
Yes, I've ridden with Kevin, and he's pretty merciful. He'll only give you what you can handle.
Okay.
So I'm not some kind of crazy G monster. I'm like, hey, well, I would like to see what this feels like, but you don't need to go, beat me up. So I pulled 9.5 Gs with him in his extra 330. I think it's a 330. But yeah, just a monster of an airplane. It was really fun to go do that with him.
God, that'd be so fun.
And I didn't try everything he does. We just kind of did a few maneuvers and he let me do some stuff. And I did what we call gentleman's aerobatics, 3 Gs, nice, easy loops and rolls.
That's probably kind of where I would be at. I'm in helicopter sales is my primary business. And I've been talking with Kirby here and there because it sounds like he's taken a keen interest in helicopters.
Yeah, he bought one.
So he bought a helicopter, and he didn't buy one of mine, so I'm a little upset about that, Kirby. Oh, God, no, I'm kidding. I didn't have the right one available for him, but I did provide him kind of some guidance, and I thought that was really cool that he was getting into helicopters. It sounds like he's really in love with flying helicopters, and so.
Oh yeah, he's all about it now. He's really, really into it.
I bet. Has he doing any flying with you?
Yeah, he's flown with me a bunch of times over the years for sure. He's a big skydiver too, so he's taken off with me many more times than he's landed with me.
That's crazy. That's he's a different person. Different.
Yeah.
That's just a different type of guy. I want to talk a little bit about just the helicopter that you're flying in the 105. But real quick, we're going to take a quick break for our sponsor call.
Thank you to our sponsor, Precision Aviation Group. Mission-critical operators and fleet managers rely on Precision Aviation Group as a worldwide leading rotor and fixed-wing MRO provider. PAG provides tip-to-tail solutions in 4 MRO segments: avionics, components, engines, and manufacturing DER services. A single point of contact gives you access to over 150 million in inventory globally, 24/7. Just call 800-537-2778. Precision Aviation Group. Others sell parts. We sell support.
All right, thanks to our sponsors. And again, joined with Aaron Fitzgerald, part of the Flying Bulls, flying the Red Bull BO-105. One of the most important things of being a helicopter aerobatic pilot is the helicopter. And I guess it sounds like, talking with you and learning about the history, that the 105 for a long time has been kind of the standard platform for doing helicopter aerobatics. Why is that, for our listeners out there that may not be super familiar with the 105 and the specific rotor system and things like that? And then, is there anything special about your 105, or is it just kind of a normal 105?
Ours is a stock BO-105. Red Bull owns 5 of them total. 4 of them are aerobatic, and yeah, they're all stock. Any BO-105 will do what we do right out of the box. And the reason that ours is that all BO-105s have that capability is the rotor system. That rigid rotor and the solid titanium rotor head just makes it virtually indestructible from an aerodynamics perspective. It doesn't have any hinges or bearings in the rotor head itself. All those forces, the lead lag and flapping forces, are all absorbed in the blade. So it tends to be rigid in plane. No matter how you load it aerodynamically, it stays in plane. So you don't really have that danger of chopping off your tail boom like you do in some other helicopters. There are other helicopters that are fully aerobatic. The 500 will do just about everything we do. It's possible that I've looped and rolled a Blackhawk. unofficially. We mentioned earlier the Lynx is fully aerobatic. All the attack helicopters like the Apache and Rich Lee actually did an aerobatic display in a 300. So
Wow.
there are a lot of helicopters that have the capability, or at least partially have the capability. I've seen test footage of a CH-53 doing a loop and a roll. So it's the BO-105 isn't the only one that can do it, but the reason we use it is because it's, first of all, the German lineage and the Austrian lineage of Red Bull,
Sure.
and that that was just a natural step. But also, it's really the most economical way to do it. There are other helicopters that have the capability, but there's a huge jump in the price point. And the BO-105 is pretty economical to operate. They don't make them anymore. They made about 1,500 of them total, and a lot of them are out there still flying, and there's pretty good storage of parts out there, so we're able to support ours even though they're not in production anymore. And the engines, the C20Bs, are really common, so it's easy to support it in an economical way. So for a corporation that it comes out of a marketing budget, so we're out there doing what we do and representing Red Bull and representing helicopters, but we're doing it in a way that we can sustain it for a long time, because the BO-105 is pretty affordable. It's a light little helicopter. I think it's the smallest twin engine helicopter ever made.
I could probably buy into that. It's yeah, I mean, I've seen them on the market recently for $4.25 for a twin engine turbine helicopter. I mean, you can hardly get a 44 for $4.25. Obviously, operating costs and things like that, I'm sure, are a little bit more excessive. But that is crazy. I always kind of figured that maybe there were some modifications done, but it's just wild that out of the factory, out of the box, these helicopters are capable of that.
Yeah, it's an amazing machine. It was way ahead of its time. The more I fly the BO-105, the more I love it. Ours specifically have been lightened. Everything's taken out of them. All the radar altimeters, anything that we don't absolutely need is gone out of there. So there's no air conditioning, no heating, no cup holders, nothing. So bare bones. But other than that, unmodified. They're just stock BO-105s. They're the
No
CBS
AC.
4 variant. No
I feel
AC.
bad. I feel bad for your ferry pilot, man. That's probably not the most comfortable ride.
No,
even if
he's
it
a
had
tough
AC.
guy. He's a better man than me.
Yeah, that would be.
I've
a
done
fun
it with
job,
him a
though.
few times. It is actually really cool. It's kind of an adventure, flying across the country in a helicopter. It takes a long time. It takes several days. So it's more of like a tour than it is, point A to point B as fast as possible kind of thing. And now,
It's a very recognizable helicopter too. So I'm sure when he's landing at ramps and things, it's probably pretty exciting for people to see the Red Bull 105.
yeah, it's pretty energizing because you're on a long ferry flight, and again, I don't want to talk for him because he does it all over the country every year, many 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 miles, and I've only done it a few times. But the times I joined him, and you're tired after a 3 hour leg, and you just want to get out and go pee, and then you land, and all the ramp guys come out, because the paint job's pretty eye-catching, and it gets a
Sure.
lot of attention, and then everybody wants to talk, and it's just then all of a sudden you're just refreshed, like, this is cool. I'm really happy to be taking this thing around and sharing it with the world. So I think he gets a lot of that when they travel around the country, and it is a ton of fun just being able to share that thing with people because they've all seen it on YouTube or on TV or whatever, and then when you land in person, it's cool. And we end up in a lot of places where people don't expect it, really small little airports in the middle of nowhere where they, their first question is, why are you guys here?
Yeah, what are you
Well, if you
doing?
draw a line in between where we were and where we need to go, look, you're perfect location.
So I know that you guys have done some really cool stunts and collaborations. You just go on YouTube and search the Red Bull helicopter, and a lot of really cool videos pop up. What's something that you've done that's kind of been something that you're really proud of that you've done with Red Bull, or maybe something that was the most fun collaboration in your experience?
We've done some cool stuff over the years for sure. One of my favorites was when I got to do aerobatics in New York City. It took some coordination, obviously, at a very high level with the FAA, but I was able to do aerobatic performance right in front of the Statue of Liberty, and then right up and down Wall Street by Battery Park, and it was just amazing to be able to do what we do in such an iconic location. I'm from a small town in Washington State, so to be in that helicopter in Manhattan in front of all those people, that was pretty surreal, and it was a really fun opportunity for me. But then we've done a bunch of cool stunts too, like I was mentioning earlier with Felix and with Luke. And then we do a combined performance at the air shows, which is really fun for me too. We have, the skydivers, and we have Kevin and Kirby, and we all perform together. And we do that all the time. So it's not routine, but we get to do it a lot. So I really enjoy going out with those guys on the road and sharing what we do, and that's fun. And then we just
Yeah.
did another stunt. We just did a test in Florida for a really cool stunt that's coming up that you'll see in the springtime that we did a collaboration in Florida. But one that we already
Man,
released was Ellie Smart, or the diver. She did a handstand off the skid and then
yep.
jumped from 81 feet into the water.
God, I saw that. That's crazy.
Yeah, she's tough. She's amazing. It was really
Yeah.
cool watching her do what she does.
Oh, I bet. Yeah, I love that you guys. I feel like Red Bull does such a good job at their content creation and the different collaborations and the fixed wing and the helicopters and the skydivers. It all kind of puts it together. And what a cool thing for you to say that. Like, a guy from Wenatchee, Washington, flying a helicopter down Wall Street. Not just any helicopter, but the Red Bull 105, doing crazy aerobatic. Not crazy, but insane in a good
Meant
way.
to look crazy.
Aerobatics, is pretty cool. Wenatchee, I think my only experience with Wenatchee, Washington, that's near Chelan, right? Lake Chelan, or on the way
Yeah, very
ish.
close. It's about a 40-minute drive. I spent a lot of time in Chelan. When I was growing up in Wenatchee, we'd go up to Chelan all the time for
Yeah,
various fun activities like water skiing and all
yeah,
that. But
Lake
Wenatchee's
Chelan is
actually,
super cool.
it's funny. There's a bunch of industries that kind of come together there. When I was growing up, there was a big logging industry, and then firefighting, and then power line construction was going on at that time in that area, because there's two hydroelectric dams, one upstream and one downstream from Wenatchee. So because of those three industries, there were helicopters everywhere all the time. So when I was a little kid, the sky was busy with all kinds of really interesting helicopters.
Lots of cherry drying too, right? In Wenatchee.
Oh yeah, yeah. They didn't when I was living there. When I was a kid, they didn't use helicopters to do that as much. They did, but not to the extent that they do now. They used to have propellers up on like a pole with a
Mm-hmm.
V8 engine up there, and they'd fire
Yep.
that up and just it would rotate around and blow the crops dry that way. But now they use almost exclusively helicopters for that, which is great because it's a lot of work for a lot of new pilots. Building time, drying cherries. It's fun work, and not a bad place to be in the springtime.
Yeah, it's a good way to build hours for sure. So beyond Red Bull, I know that recently, or I don't know how recent it is, but I know that you've partnered up with Kevin LaRosa. What are you and K2 doing together, and what does that next business venture look like?
Well, we have a group of guys together. Kevin's one of the main partners. There's 8 of us all together, and it's different disciplines, right? So there's Kevin and I are the helicopter pilots, and then and there's 2 other helicopter pilots, Alex Anduzzi and Kenny Brown. They do the Blackhawk side of things. 'Cause we use Blackhawks a lot for film and television. We've got Michael Fitzmaurice, who's one of the top aerial DPs in the industry, probably the top guy right now. He's one of our partners, Roger Tonry, and then we have some guys on the technical side as well. So we can cover all aspects of aerial production with this group we have. It's kind of just a partnership, a team that we put together so that we can handle all aerial production needs in-house with our guys. And we're all friends and we've all worked together a lot. So there's a lot of trust and camaraderie, and we've done a lot of big projects together, traveled around the world making movies and stuff. So it was just kind of a natural thing to form a venture together, and that's what we've done. So the future hopefully holds more of what we've been doing on a bigger and more frequent scale. I love making movies. It's like I was saying earlier, it's just fun to solve those problems creatively, and now doing it together with my friends who I trust and love to work with. So it's just getting better.
That's so cool. And like you said earlier, Kevin is top of his game, and such a good dude. Being in that business, is there something that you're extremely proud of? A sequence that you've done, something that we may be familiar with that you to this day are just like, man, that's awesome.
Yeah, we did a really good job that day.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's been a few. One of them that springs to mind is the finale of the movie Extraction, the first one with Chris Hemsworth. There was a big firefight on a bridge. That's the kind of the culmination of the movie. He's fighting his way out of this city, and we filmed all that on a bridge in Thailand, and it was really fun. We were there for about 10 days working up to that scene. And we shot it in a bunch of different ways and pieced together a whole bunch of shots. And then for the finale is when they set off all the pyro and blew up all the cars, and they were out there, stunt guys with automatic weapons and helicopters doing crossing maneuvers. And it was just one of those days where you look around at all the smoke and fire and helicopters and machine guns and go, this is pretty fun. And the scene turned out cool. It's amazing that all the fight sequences in that and all the action. It's just a really, really fun movie to watch. And it was a tremendous amount of fun to be on it. And I'm proud of what we did. We did some good work on that movie, and you can see it on screen. It looks really good.
Does it take extra work on your end when you're doing an overseas project like that and working in a different jurisdiction that's not the FAA?
Yes, it does, and it's not even possible in some places. So in the way we did it in Thailand, Kevin LaRosa did most of the work, the preliminary work on that, but he wasn't able to go because he was busy shooting Top Gun Maverick on those dates. So I was the one that got chosen to go in there and film that, and it was really fun
Sweet.
for me because getting the authorization to fly there is pretty involved. I had to send them all kinds of records and literal photos of my logbook and all kinds of, just a lot to go through to get approved to fly there. But then once you're there and you're flying, you can basically do whatever you want. Once hey, we told you could fly, go for it, go do whatever you want. Yeah, so it's really fun. We were flying down riverbeds and down city streets more or less, and it was fun. I mean, we were doing it in a safe way, but in a different way than we do it here in the United States for sure.
Where in Thailand was that?
The name of the village was about this long with a lot of letters, but we were basically straight west of Bangkok, about an hour and a half drive west of Bangkok out on a little river. So we basically had this bridge for the duration of the shoot, and they've had all the stunt cars out there and all the pyro rigged and everything out there.
That's cool. I love Thailand. Big fan of Thailand. Had my honeymoon there last year.
Oh, wow.
Incredible place. The food to me is like why we chose Thailand, and we're originally supposed to go to Vietnam as well, but COVID kind of poo-pooed on that plan. But we chose those two areas because that's our two favorite ethnic foods.
I think we were in a grittier area of Thailand than you were on your honeymoon. We weren't in the glamorous part. There was no beach anywhere near where we were, and it was really hot.
Yeah, it's very hot and sticky there. In the non-rainy season. Aaron, a lot of my listeners are guys and gals that are new to the industry. They're learning. And I feel like someone like you who's had an amazing career, you probably have some takeaways. And not even just to get to the seat of Red Bull or do all the amazing things that you're doing on the motion picture side, but what are some of the big takeaways that you believe would make someone successful within this industry?
Well, if you boil it down into just a couple of words, I would say attitude and effort, right? So be a nicer person. That's that simple on that side of it. And then work harder. Just literally work harder than the person next to you. Totally. And prove that you're ready to work all the time. So my first job that I got in the helicopter business, I was working at the FBO fueling while I was getting my ratings. And then as soon as I got my license, I was all ready to go to work, I thought. But you know how hard it is to get that first job. So basically I went over to this news operation, and I noticed that they were flying the most out of everybody. So I wanted to go work for them. So I went over there and I started running the buffer on the hangar floor and washing cars, and I'd get there before they did. And they'd show up and go, "Hey, what are you doing, man? We don't have any work for you. We're not going to hire you." And I'd go, "Okay, cool. Well, I'll see you tomorrow." And then I'd show up the next day, and I'd be buffing the floor the next day. And I did that for quite a while. And then when they needed somebody, then I was the guy standing there. So you just have to persevere in the beginning. But then after you get into the business a little bit, I see some people sometimes that get a little jaded at one level of a job or another. They get kind of burned out. I've seen it in ENG. I've seen it in utility, other various aspects of the industry that I've worked in. But my advice to anybody who's trying to move along and, work toward a larger goal in aviation, if there's a job you want or a specific part of the industry you want to work in, my advice would be to take whatever job is in front of you today as seriously as you possibly can, whether it's your end goal or not, and really, really put the effort into whatever today's mission is and try to be the very best at that. And that's what's going to propel you to the next level.
100%. It's really easy. I've caught myself in that before where I'm flying the same job, doing kind of the same thing over and over. It can become a little monotonous. And I always try to bring it back. I was a line guy myself for many years. And I remember as a line guy, one thing that was kind of a weird perception that I had as a young person getting into aviation was most of all the pilots that I would deal with as a line guy were super grumpy. And I would think to myself, why are you so grumpy? You are doing, I would give my left nut to be doing what you're doing right now, not cleaning out the pooper of your jet. you can't be that grumpy, and then you get older and you start working in the business. And I've caught myself at times being maybe a little bit grumpy. And I always try to remember that experience that I had. Or, like even when I was flying air medical, it was always like the guaranteed cheer me up was if I would land at like a ground pad and like 3 or 4 little kids would come out, and be peeking on the fence. Cause I was that little kid. Right. And now to be on the other side of the fence, would always it always happened. I don't know if it's divine or what, but anytime I was just having like a case of the pities for myself, I would have something like that. And I'd be like, okay, this is actually a pretty cool thing. And I think it's important because I've been around people before. One grumpy person at an air medical base or within a utility company or anywhere can really sour the experience for everyone. Like it can really bring down the whole vibe of everyone. So I think it's really important advice.
Yeah. Be nicer. Have more fun.
Make
it fun.
And it should be. You get one life, and it's like we shouldn't be working through it miserably. We should be doing things that we love. And I think anyone that's flying a helicopter for whatever you're doing in the industry, it's like better than sending emails all day, right? So I think
goodness.
Yeah, I think we're all pretty fortunate.
I love flying. That's what I do on my days off. I go jump in and fly. I have a couple of little airplanes that I fly, and I just really love to fly. And I hope I never lose sight of that. And I hope I don't ever lose that passion for it because, like you were saying, the advice that I would give to people is just try to hold on to that passion that you had that got you into it, because it's not easy to break in. So clearly you had some passion, you had some desire, some dream to do this. So hang on to that, and remind yourself every day that this is what you get to do. That's what I try to do. It's easy in the Red Bull helicopter because it generates so much excitement everywhere it goes.
Yeah.
But I fly other stuff too. We're in the middle of nowhere, where there's nobody around, and it's still just as much fun. Building power lines is equally fun.
Yeah, I mean, flying is magical. Yeah, you do some utility work, right? Firefighting and other utility ops.
Yeah. For a number of years, I did utility full time. I really liked it, building power lines up in the mountains. And I'll tell you my kid on the fence story. It's perfect tie-in for that. So in Wenatchee, I had mentioned that they were building a set of transmission lines when I was a kid, about, I don't know, 8 or 9 years old at that time. They were building the transmission lines that went right behind where my house is up in the mountains. So I walked up there one day, and there was what I now know is an S-58 up there working. They were building the structure on the side of a mountain. And so I was on one ridge over just by myself. I just hiked up there, kid, and then the helicopter finished what it was doing and started coming over to the ridge where I was. And I thought, oh, he's going to land here. I got to hide, because if he sees me standing here, he'll go land somewhere else, right? So I jumped in a bush, right? And I'm like 9-year-old kid. I'm in a bush, and this S-58 landed probably 30 feet from me. The pilot never saw me because I was a kid in the bush, right? Probably dirty too, because I was a Wenatchee kid, so I blended in. Good camo, right? So anyway, he lands and he pulls the engines back to idle, doesn't shut it down, and whips out his sandwich and starts eating the sandwich. And I was watching this guy eat his lunch in this helicopter with the blades turning. And I thought, man, you're looking up because the S-58 sits pretty high. And I was watching this guy and thinking, that is the coolest dude in the world. He's sitting in a helicopter eating his lunch. And then when he finishes, he's going to go back to building power lines with that thing. Man, I had this like little kid crush on this guy, right? Little cartoon heart shooting out of my head while I was watching him. And then fast forward about, I don't know how many years, I ended up working on a power line project and told that story to a guy. And he said, I was there. I was on that project. That pilot's name was, I can't remember now. But anyway, the full circle moment came around where I was landing on ridge tops, eating my lunch out there in a lawn chair. I usually shut down, but I ended up, I met a bunch of the guys that were there that day. They were older by the time I met them, but I ended up in that industry doing exactly what I saw that guy doing that day.
I was just thinking, like, watch that guy, like, be a listener to my podcast. Be like, that was me.
I saw you in the bush the whole time, kid. I knew you were there.
What, being part of Red Bull, obviously, when you're at the air show, I'm guessing you're maybe part of a static display, and probably a big part of your job is just interacting with the public. Have you had some cool feedback or cool stories of people that came to an air show with no thought of ever flying a helicopter and left that day and after seeing you became a helicopter pilot?
I don't know if there's a direct inspiration story. I haven't been doing it that long to where a little kid would already be, through everything and out in the business doing it. There's a few people that I know working in the industry now who I met as kids. and they've worked their way in. I know this kid named Michael who's flying Blackhawks now, fighting fire. But I met him when he was a little kid. He was like 8 years old. Told me he wanted to be a helicopter pilot, and he trained all the way through. And it was fun. He didn't get inspired from seeing the Red Bull display, but that does happen. I don't have a direct connection with anybody that's happened to full circle quite yet. But just about every one of the jet demo pilots, like the Raptor demo, Viper demo, every one of those people has a picture of themselves with the demo pilot from when they were a kid, and it's so cool because, yeah, I mean, I remember the first air show I ever went to. They had one in Wenatchee, and I remember it like it was this morning, and that was many, many years ago. They don't have an air show anymore, but I just remember being just blown away by being able to see all that stuff up close. So to go and kind of drink in that energy every other weekend or so is really fun for me. And I just really love it. At this point in my, my age, my life, my career, it's really fun to be able to, everybody says give back. I'm not really giving anything. I'm just doing something really fun, and I get to share it with everybody. Cool. And I love that aspect of it. It just is shining a light on our little world, little helicopter world, small part of aviation that I get to go share with everybody now.
Well, I think they picked the right guy because it seems like you also have the personality to be a good ambassador for all of helicopter pilots, right? So I think Red Bull really, really did good on picking you, not only as a phenomenal stick, obviously, but it seems like you're probably that guy that's very approachable at the air show and very excited. And I'm guessing if it's anything like my just growing up experience of being an aviation nut, I mean, the air show, I grew up outside of Portland, the Hillsborough Air Show every year. I mean, that was like my Super Bowl. I would be waiting for months and months and months. And, it was always like a big thing. Like my parents would do some big surprise on giving me the tickets, and it was like this big event, and it really helped spur my continued excitement for aviation. So I think air shows play a huge role in recruitment of getting people involved. And I think that's important now because, numbers are suffering on both sides. And I think with podcasts and YouTube videos and Instagram and social media, I think some of the positive of that is not just during air shows now, but people can be on their computers or their phones and be consuming some of that content and seeing the cool things that you're doing or other pilots are doing, and then feel inspired to do the same thing. So I think that you are playing a role in that. So I think that's really neat. Speaking of Portland and Oregon, can I expect you at an air show up here?
Not this season. Yeah, we already got our 2024 schedule, and we're not coming to Oregon. We did book the Hillsborough Air Show one year, but then I think it was the COVID year, it got canceled, so we ended up not going. And then the following year, it was an all women's air show. I think it was that one. So, which is awesome, but I didn't qualify for that one.
Yeah, you're not part of that one.
So I was actually born in Portland, so I have to come back and do an air show. I've never done an air show in Oregon, so we got to make that happen. Maybe 2025.
What hospital were you born in?
Emmanuel Hospital, right downtown.
Emmanuel. Okay, cool. I'm a St. V's guy. My wife, 3 weeks later, St. V's. I was hoping you were going to say St. V's, so we would have that, but Emmanuel's close enough.
Close enough. We're both Portland guys.
That's really cool. Yeah. Oregonian, right?
Yep.
If someone wants to check you out on social media, how can they find you? How can they find out next year's air show schedule? What's the best way for them to look up all that fun stuff?
On Instagram, which I'm most active on, it's Aaron Fitzgerald 105. So just my name, and then I put the 105 on there because my name was already taken. So I fly a BO 105. So Aaron Fitzgerald 105. Come check me out. Come along for the ride. There's always videos and stuff of us doing what we do.
Very cool content. That's how we got a hold of you. I appreciate you being extremely responsive, and I just feel so lucky to have you on the show. To our listeners, thank you for listening. And to guests like Aaron, you guys make this possible. To MHM Publishing and the Vertical HeliCASTS platform. Aaron, thank you again for joining. Please continue to do what you're doing. I love the content. I'm hoping that I can come and maybe at sometime twist an arm to maybe do an in-helicopter podcast with you. We've talked about it before, and I think my favorite line from you was the grown-ups at Red Bull, I think, decided that was acceptable. So I think maybe we can actually make that happen.
That's not a no. Let's go.
Yeah. So I think we need to make that happen. Hopefully I don't make a fool out of myself and like vomit, but hey, if I do, I do. It's okay.
No shame. As long as you get it in the bag, then there's no shame. You wouldn't be the first one to vomit, by the way. It's not that uncommon.
I don't know if I would. I can
You
do
probably
roller
wouldn't.
coasters. If I do back to back to back roller coasters, I start to feel like a little, um, but I do pretty good. But we'll see. You know, the helicopter could be a different experience. But I did fly tours long enough in the Grand Canyon to know the importance of a six sack.
Mhm.
And I feel like I would be doing you a huge disservice if I didn't use the sack because unfortunately I've had some experiences of people not making it in the sack.
Yeah, I mean,
So
we're all helicopter pilots here, right? I've determined that you have about 8 seconds to come up with a bag when somebody asks for one, because
yep,
it's coming. By the time they think to ask for the bag, it's already
it's too
underway.
late.
It's
No,
happening.
it's if you
Yeah,
think you need the bag, you've waited too long. That's what I would tell
yeah,
people. Like I
yeah.
say, hey, look, I know that you don't want to think about that you're feeling sick because it maybe makes it worse, but you can't help it. You're gonna get sick. So the second you have that thought, you put that bag in your hand and it's open. And
Yeah.
if you ride like that for an hour and a half, that's completely okay. And unfortunately, most
You're
people
going to be
wouldn't listen.
fine, but hold this bag.
Please hold this bag. Well, Aaron, really great to talk with you. I can't wait to meet you in person. Are you going to be at HAI this year?
I will, yes.
Awesome. So we'll be in Anaheim as well. Not exhibiting, but we'll be kind of roaming the floor. And actually, the Helicopter Podcast, along with Hanger Z and The Real Rescue, will be doing podcasts from the MHM Vertical magazine booth. So if you're at the Heli Expo and you're listening, come check us out. Say hi. Aaron, let's try to connect at Expo. And again, thank you so much for joining.
Thanks for having me. It's a huge honor. And all of you helicopter pilots watching, if you see me at Heli Expo, come up and say hi.
All right. That's going to happen now.
Okay. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Aaron. Hey, podcast listeners. My name is Halsey Schider, and I'm the principal broker and owner of HeliCASTS. HeliCASTS is a new age, data-driven, helicopter-specific sales brokerage, bringing helicopter listings to new heights. At HeliCASTS, we utilize digital positioning, paid advertising, and our large network of industry professionals to move your helicopter quickly and efficiently. Unsure the value of your helicopter? Lucky for you, HeliCASTS offers a complimentary market evaluation. All you have to do is contact the team today. Are you ready to take your helicopter listing from Mayday to payday? Easy. Fill out the contact information below, and a HeliCASTS pilot agent will reach out shortly. HeliCASTS. List it, sell it, done.
Thank you to our sponsor, Robinson Helicopter Company, the choice for unrivaled safety and reliability so you can accomplish any mission with confidence. For more than half a century, Robinson has been at the forefront of the helicopter industry. From the R-22 to the R-66 turbine, Robinson makes helicopters accessible so more people can accomplish more missions. Climb higher. For additional information, visit www.robinsonheli.com.
All right. Thanks again to Aaron Fitzgerald for joining earlier in 2024. I think that was a highlight for me. It's cool. It's like in the helicopter industry, there aren't that many people that are like legit, kind of like famous helicopter people. And I think that Aaron's one of them. And so it's really nice to have a conversation with him, learn about, again, how he got to where he's doing. So if you like that clip, make sure that you go back and listen to the entire episode. Again, it's episode number 60. Moving right along, I got to podcast a lot with Robinson Helicopters this year. Big news from this past Heli Expo that David Smith had taken the helm after the family had been running it essentially from the very beginning. Frank, of course, first, and then his son Kurt, and David now being the first non-Robinson. And one of the things that David's been doing is he's been talking to us. He's been podcasting with us. I think I've done 4 podcasts with him specifically. And then just a couple others with Robinson in general. And that's been really neat to be able to have that peek inside one of the largest OEMs in our industry and an American-based OEM at that there in Torrance, California. The episode that I picked out for this particular end of year was actually not with David. However, you should go and check those out. We talked to David about his new position. We talked about extension on some life limited components for the R66. I met with him in Randall recently in Europe, and we talked all about Europe and other things that Robinson is excited about. But this specific episode is actually an in-helicopter podcast I did with a test pilot down in Torrance. His name is Chris Smith. This is episode number 78, so dropped a little bit later in 2024. And look, anytime I get to be in a helicopter flying around beautiful Southern California and talking to someone with a really cool job like Chris has, it's just an opportunity that I couldn't pass up. The conversation, was very encompassing. We talked about Chris. We talked about what it's like to be a test pilot. And we also talked about how he got into that. It's a very, again, unique niche profession within our industry. And so the clip that I chose here was Chris talking a little bit how he kind of stumbled upon working at Robinson now for the second time, actually. So he tells us about the first time, then there was a little bit of a gap, and then now he's back. So awesome episode with Chris. Again, this is an in-helicopter podcast, so you'll hear us talking to other aircraft. You'll hear some other aircraft talking on frequency and ATC and things like that. I think it just adds to the whole accoutrement. Enjoy the episode clip here with Chris Smith.
Part of that opening and part of that whole kind of original staffing there. So what that did for me is it allowed me to have a very, very large student pool right from the beginning, which you could imagine, being handed basically like 16 students all at one time. You could work as much as you possibly
That's awesome.
needed.
Yeah.
So with that satellite office being moved to Long Beach, I started as a flight instructor there. I kind of was in a ripe spot to meet people like Doug Tompkins, the original test pilot for Robinson, Tim Tucker, being kind of a mentor within that, kind of, teaching environment. And they were also the DPEs for that flight school, right? So they would come out and I would see them often and developed really good relationships with both of them. So I got an opportunity to kind of move into the chief position at that flight school and really tried to take everything that they ever told me as being important and kind of apply it within that flight school environment. And, through their, mentoring, I was able to be pretty successful in that position. And then it came time to move on to figure out something else. So I reached out to Doug and, asked him about, a possible position as a production flight test pilot at Robinson. And he put me in touch with the master himself, Frank Robinson, and I interviewed with him.
Nice.
And I was very lucky to gain a position at Robinson. So that was kind of my, kind of intro into the Robinson family and being part of that. And I stayed in that position, or I stayed, at Robinson for a little over 7 years and grew in that position. I started as a production test pilot, as I mentioned, moving into doing more kind of small experimental flight tests. And that was right when the 66 was getting ripe in its certification process. So continued to move into, more and more responsibility in the experimental flight test world. And then started doing some of the critical flight testing, high altitude strain surveys and, helping define some of the high velocity diagram and stuff like that. And, was totally given that opportunity and totally mentored. And I learned so much over about a 5-year stint about flight testing and, the engineering that goes behind it and, all of the little, kind of nuances that you need to understand to do a good job as a flight test pilot. So a lot of homegrown, kind of stuff was going on there that really I, sometimes take for granted, but, you'll never, it's very hard to get that, right?
I mean, it's very unique. Not very many opportunities come up for pilots to be able to be in a flight testing position like that.
Yeah, so I think a little element I didn't talk about that I think is very important is, I grew up in a very, in a family. My dad was very mechanically inclined. We were building hot rods from the time I was super little and, building engines and welding and just fabrication in general So like kind of that engineering intuition and building and how structures work and load paths and, being able to understand a lot of that was kind of something I grew up around, and I was attracted to it, right? I was always attracted to it. And partially I was attracted to helicopters because it's a pretty awesome toy, right? I mean, think of like, you go to a 900 horsepower hot rod that does wheelies. Well, I mean, what beats that? Well, a helicopter beats that, right? So that's kind of how I got into that. But I'm also an A&P mechanic, so I also had the ability to, fully get into the guts of not only helicopters but fixed wing, and kind of have that side of things too. So that kind of also allowed Robinson to kind of lean on me for other stuff, right? So not only was I doing flight test work within Robinson, but I was also participating in being a subject matter expert for accidents, going back and making sure that, we could find continuity through all the controls, and working in accident investigation alongside the NTSB. So I had a pretty heavy role within Robinson there for the last about, 3 to 5 years that I spent there. And I'm sure the question is going to come up, well, why'd you leave? You know what I mean? So I think at some point and this is just me, I mean, other people don't make this decision, but I felt like I needed to find some other stuff, go look and see what else was out there, right? So I took a 10-year hiatus. I left, and I call it a radical sabbatical, right? I went and took a little leave of absence, and I went and did some other things that I wanted to do, and I was already participating in some of this, on the side slightly, and met some other really good mentors out there, all local to Southern California here.
Traffic 1 o'clock.
Thank you so much. 60 Whiskey's been in the break while continuing eastbound 1,500. So, some other mentors. So, for example, I got to do some motion picture television stuff with a couple local companies here. I worked as a contractor for 2 different companies flying news in LA. I did a little bit of charter work. I did, so I was able to kind of like grow there. And then I had some life changes that went on. I don't want to get into it too much, but I met a new partner, and she wanted to kind of move, so I was totally open to it, just give it a try. I mean, it was that part of my life where I was like, let's go figure something out. So I moved up to Northern California. More opportunities presented themselves. I did a lot more motion picture television stuff up there. I did a lot of news flying up there, and then I kind of got the opportunity to go and get into fighting some fires, man. I worked with some really good people, so I fought fires in the Eastern Sierra. Beautiful place, amazing opportunity. I had some 133 long line time prior from doing flight testing here, working for some other operators, so I was able to get carded fairly easy and get into that, which was another real piece that I really cherish as a opportunity and kind of a learning piece that helps me now in my current position. From there, I kind of went back into engineering. I really wanted to be back within engineering, and I started looking, and it was right at the time when the eVTOL companies started coming around, and I interviewed with Joby and some other companies like that early on. Didn't really find a good fit initially, but because of knowing people, I delivered a helicopter to a company, and they actually recruited me in doing, and they were a startup with some pretty wild ideas, but recruited me in, and I spent just over 4 years working with some of the smartest people, developing flight control laws, advanced technology, working with PhD guys. I was empowered by a gentleman that, I can't thank enough to lead a team and build something from scratch, all in the kind of GA light helicopter world, but, kind of applying advanced technologies and advanced techniques to get things done. System identification, designing initial systems to actuate aircraft, from scratch, all experimental, but safe, with, amazing guys who, helped me get that done. So I spent a lot of time there. I poured my whole entire heart into it. But once again, it was time to make another change. So I started looking around, and it just felt right to try to get back home. So I talked to a couple of the key players at Robinson, and they were more than happy to know that I was looking, and they wanted me back pretty badly. So here I am. I'm back at Robinson, and you know, not only did you know, recently we got the horizontal stabilizer done. There's a new
Traffic,
ship up here.
12 o'clock, got him.
Another 1 o'clock high as well.
Oh, thanks.
And 6-0 Whiskey is just coming up on Sunset Beach. We're southeastbound along the shoreline at 1,000. I got the 2 news ships parked up there in sight, and we're going to continue southeastbound.
Copy, thanks, man.
So a lot to unpack. I do want to rewind. Just a
rewind
bit.
to all those. I know you got it. You're going to have to.
If it's
give
good,
me
I love
some
it.
Granulation
No,
there. Yeah,
I love it. First and foremost, if you can remember.
Yeah.
What was the interview like sitting down with Frank Robinson? Just kind of walk me through that.
Yeah, so that was one of those moments, right, where you walk in and there's so much, you know, you feel like you're in that position where there's just so much to lose that you're kind of in this, like, you're looking through a toilet paper tube. Like, I'll be honest, I just know that it was super uncomfortable.
Yeah.
He asked me some super hard questions, and when I walked out of there, I was for sure, you know, I for sure did not have a job.
Okay.
And then I saw Doug on the other side of the door, and he's all, yeah, you can start on, you know, whatever. And I'm like, I had no idea. So it was, you know, I mean, Frank Robinson was a legend, right? I mean, you look at this guy, you sit down with this guy, you know, and, you know, knowing how much other important stuff he had to do at the factory at that time, because he was fully participating, you know, during the time that, you know, I was interviewing. I mean, he was still the head of the whole show. You know, was super humbling and scary at the same time. So it was just one of those things. You know, he asked some hard questions. I gave the best answers I could, and somehow I squeaked through it.
That's
so
awesome.
That was my experience.
That's a cool thing, because not many people can have that story.
Yeah.
You know, that's a very unique thing and very cool. One of the things that I've noticed at my time here this week at Robinson is just this idea of, we're not here for a long time in life, relatively, right? It's kind of like, you know.
That's the saying, you know, you're here for a good time, just not a long time. Yeah.
Exactly. And it boggles me, because I have a bit of an entrepreneurial spirit myself, to look at what someone can do in the span of a lifetime. And for Frank, it was really a half a lifetime of when he started Robinson to what it is now. You know, walking around that factory. We did a time lapse where we drove a little cart through the factory with a time lapse. Zach, how long did it take to go through?
To drive through on the cart took 3.5 minutes.
It took 3.5 minutes to drive through this factory. And so to see that this person, with the help of many others, of course, was able in his lifetime, half of his lifetime, be able to create that. So I think that's really neat about Robinson. Obviously, also being patriotic. I love the idea that it's an American-based company.
Absolutely, yeah.
And it's so incredible to see all the manufacturing that goes in. One of the things that you talked about was this idea of mentorship. You had some of Tim Tucker, your other flight test engineer, as mentors. In this industry, a lot of our listeners are getting into the industry. They're new, they're learning. Just can you go a little bit deeper on what
like
mentorship has meant to you, and what that means? You know, I think you have to be in the right place to receive mentorship too.
Yeah. So, you know, the thing, mentorship for me, you know, I mean, this was never like something, you know, and maybe I'm stubborn but I never really reached out for mentorship. It's not like I was ever like, you know, let me try to network. That wasn't my style really. But when I saw something that I thought was important, I always gravitated towards it, right? So maybe once again, going back, I didn't really like try to like say, hey, you're my mentor, I look up to you. But I always showed that person, whoever it may be, that what they had was valuable in my own way, and tried to just learn as much as I could from them, you know, kind of just saying, hey, and trying to work with them and figure out how we can do business together some way. I mean, not involving money so much, but like, how can I hang out more? You know what I mean? And I bet you some of these people don't even realize they were my mentors, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of the key there is that, you're learning and absorbing and doing all this thing from, kind of some of these industry leaders or just leaders in what you consider their field. And it's just all about making friends, man. It's all about, just being part of whatever it is and whoever it is with in a natural way, you know what I mean? Just participate. And sometimes it's hard to get there. It really is, you know what I mean? But, you got to kind of figure out a way to just be part of it. I mean, for an example, I was working with a really cool guy that I don't get to spend time with anymore. In getting in, from Robinson, all of like kind of the training and some of the techniques that I became very good at. He wanted to bring that into maybe flying something like an AS350. Like, can we use some of those techniques and bring some of that teaching in there and show people like a little different way? And, he brought me under his wing and we worked on stuff, and it was super cool to be able to apply that, to another aircraft, right? So since then I've done that many times, but that was like another piece of mentorship where he was like, yeah, I'm willing to work with you. Let's do it. And I looked up to this guy like crazy, and he's asking me for advice to, go ahead and do some teaching. So, things like that, that mentorship to me was sort of like that, it was just, find somebody that you think is valuable and, befriend them and help them, and they'll help you. You know what I mean? It's a give and take for sure.
This podcast is brought to you by HeliCASTS. Tired of listings that go nowhere? Exhausted by tire kickers who waste your time? Don't sell your helicopter alone. HeliCASTS handles the entire process from start to finish. So, if your helicopter is sat too long waiting for a buyer, contact the team at HeliCASTS today for your complimentary market valuation. Call 1-855-HeliCASTS, 1-855-735-5226, or email sales@helicopter.com. HeliCASTS. List it, sell it, done.
All right, so as the year, as 2025 approaches, I'm hoping that I can do more in helicopter podcasts like I did with Chris there. I hope you guys enjoyed that. It's so much fun. Again, flying in helicopters is the coolest thing ever, and to podcast from helicopters is even more awesome. So I love it. I don't know how many other podcasts are actually doing them from the helicopter. So I don't know if I'm a trailblazer there, but I certainly do enjoy. The last episode I want to highlight for this specific end of year wrap up is episode number 100, which is a big deal. Made it to 100. I should actually know how many we're at now, but we're 100 plus. So I'm just so mind blown about that, to be honest. I can't believe that we've made it this far. And again, thank you to the listeners for just continuing to support. We release a new episode every single Tuesday. So to hit 100 was a huge milestone for this podcast. And I was really purposeful about inviting this guest to share number 100. It was Lee Coates. Lee, if you don't know who she is, she's an absolute badass. She's pretty well known now on social media. She is doing some incredible content, but she also has an incredible background in helicopter aviation and truly is someone that eats, breathes, sleeps helicopter aviation and even airplanes. And she shares the content, and she shares what I consider to be responsible content. She has an extensive background in operating. She owned her own company. She worked helicopters in Alaska, flying a lot of utility and things like that. And so she's a professional pilot that killed it with her operation. And now in her retirement, she's going around, she's continuing to fly in her iconic Candy Cane 505. And I was just so excited to talk with Lee. I've had the privilege of meeting her a couple times in person. And man, is she just so down to earth, so fun, so knowledgeable, and a true badass in this industry. So in this clip, we talk a little bit about her operation in Alaska, how that all kind of unfolded and how it started. Again, this is episode 100. So, this is a cool, fun 15-minute clip, but make sure that you go back and listen to the entire episode. Check it out here.
So when I was going through school, I didn't know any helicopter pilots. So I didn't really have a mentor to talk to, ask questions. And so I really do put myself out there for anybody. And I get a lot of messages. People ask, hey, I'm thinking about going to helicopter school. What can you tell me about this or that? Or thinking about doing this type of flying. So I will take time. And usually I'll just say, hey, give me a phone call and let's just sit down and talk, because I've got to banter back and forth to understand what stage you are. I don't want to waste my time if you're just like, oh, I'm going to either be an actress or a helicopter pilot. I don't know. So,
yeah, I've had a few of those.
But to be able to help guide someone and be able to tell them the pros and the cons, and it's a really, really fun career for a lot of us, but it doesn't work for everybody. So.
Yeah, it's a tough career. I think I love when I talk to people, man, I give them the good, the bad, the ugly from my experience.
Mm-hmm.
And my experience is wildly different than your experience. Speaking of which, just in the interest of time, so you're flying utility up in Alaska, you're really progressing. When is this moment that you have this silly idea of, hey, I'm going to start a helicopter company?
Honestly, it was an accidental company, and it's just the craziest thing, because I met two guys that were both private pilots, and they wanted to fly and buy a helicopter. And so the three of us went in on it, and I said, well, why don't you let me see if I can make some money with this thing? And next thing you know, I was like, you guys can't fly the helicopter this weekend because I need the hours for this job. I've got this job. Like, everything just started happening. And at the end of that season, I was like, we should take those profits and buy another helicopter. And each year we just did that. We just kept on going. And each year we thought, well, now we'll have enough helicopters that you can actually go and practice and have some fun with your helicopter. Well, it took a decade, and we finally just sold the whole business, and now we have a helicopter to play with.
I love that.
Yeah,
that's incredible. It's funny how things really happen like that. You start with one expectation and it turns into something else. For our listeners who may not be familiar, first off, what was the name of the business? What were the early days of that business look like? What jobs were you doing? And then over time, what did that business turn into?
So it was called VS Helicopters, Vertical Solutions. And we started with one used R44. And the jobs I was doing was mostly telecommunications. So here I'm in Valdez, Alaska, this tiny little, like 2,500 people town. And the company that I had worked with when I was working for other companies that was doing all of this work on the cell phone sites, they needed to upgrade. They're like, oh, you're local Valdez? Well, we'll use you all summer. So I just helped them build and update all these cell phone sites throughout the Sound. And that really was the majority of our work for the first few years. So we did that. We did geology. We ended up with 3 R44s, an R66, and an A-Star, a B2. AS350 B2. I loved that machine. And then we also did tours. So people that are coming in on bus trips, we did a lot of glacier tours for them and walk-in tours. But we did search and rescue, worked with the fire department. In fact, one of them called me just the other night, and they're like, oh, this is Lee. Sorry, I thought I was calling VS. We've sold the company since. He's like, but I had your number there. So I was like, I'm available. So let's go do it.
You're my go-to.
Yeah. I mean, all kinds of jobs in Alaska that you just can't even fathom, including NASA. They were actually JPL. They were working on a robot that they want to send to Europa and some of the other icy moons of Jupiter. And they have to practice driving it around on the ice. So I'm slinging it around the glacier for them. $2 million robot.
Love that.
Yep. And then like a Chinese scientist that came to town, and they wanted to pay in cash, and they wanted to put in a weather station up in one of the glaciers. And they're counting out like $12,000 of cash to pay me. I'm like, this is just interesting. An old miner will come in with his little bag and say, hey, can you drop me off up there? I'll pay you in gold afterwards. Just like random, but a lot of Coast Guard stuff, geology, flying the USGS around. I call them rock doctors because they all have their masters. Really fun jobs. The heli skiing. I mean, yeah, I can't even name all the crazy
Everything.
jobs.
You guys,
Yeah,
I mean,
everything.
it's when you're moving the NASA robot around the ice. It's one of those moments where you're probably like, "Oh my God, I'd never imagined I would be doing this." I've had a couple helicopter experiences. I'm like, I had no idea this was even a thing, right? And so that's I think one of the cool things about helicopters is kind of the oddball one-off missions that you'll do every once in a while. Like, what was that? I'm curious to hear from your perspective. Obviously, with my helicopter sales business, Helicopter, shameless plug. We're dealing with owners, operators constantly, right? And so I don't own a helicopter, but I've seen, what ownership can look and feel like. I've had some kind of past experience in a 44 myself, but what was that transition like for you going from pilot to now pilot operator, someone that was responsible for scheduling maintenance and ordering parts? And, I'm guessing in the earlier years you had like pilot Lee, director of maintenance Lee, chief pilot Lee. Like, what was that like in those early years? And what were some of the
Yeah.
fumbles?
It was definitely a learning process for sure. I was super fortunate that both of my partners, we all had different things that we were good at. So I was really good at the day-to-day operations and the flying. Mike was really good at figuring out the contracts, getting us on the OAS so we could go do fire contracts and other things. And Douglas, he is our maintenance guy. So luckily for me, I mean, it's a lot. I don't know how one person handles all of that because even just as a single ownership, there's so much to do. So I understand why there's companies in place that do manage your machines for you. But so Douglas took care of maintenance, coordinating, and getting in the right AMPs. Mike was paperwork, and How is day-to-day operations. So, I mean, but the first, like sending out a bill and figuring out how to work QuickBooks. Oh my gosh. I remember sitting on the floor with Mike and I'm just like handwriting stuff and then like Googling, okay, how does this work? How do we do this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Paying quarterly taxes. Like, what is that? I don't want to do that.
Right.
I think what people don't
lot.
understand about running a business, it's like you have the primary business, and that's usually good businesses are started from something that you're passionate about. In your case, helicopters. In my case, helicopters as well, just a little bit of a different part of the industry. But what you soon find out that the business is so much more, and it's nothing about anything that you're interested in, right? It's about accounting and paying this invoice and sending out an invoice to get paid. Getting paid is super important. Not always super intuitive when you first started a business, right? Paying taxes. I read a statistic recently that most small businesses fail within 2 to 3 years because of the unknown tax liability. So you're making all this money and you're spending all this money and you're not setting any aside for Uncle Sam. So it's just, I'm so impressed. Anyone that has a business, small, medium, or large, it's so hard to do. And I have to say, Lee, I think owning a helicopter company has to be probably one of the hardest businesses that can exist.
Agreed. Absolutely. It is stressful.
Helicopters are expensive. They're finicky. At times heartbreaking, really. Breaking down at the worst times. I mean, I'm guessing you had certainly some big highs and some lows in running that business.
This podcast is brought to you by HeliCASTS. Tired of listings that go nowhere? Exhausted by tire kickers who waste your time? Don't sell your helicopter alone. HeliCASTS handles the entire process from start to finish. So, if your helicopter is sat too long waiting for a buyer, contact the team at HeliCASTS today for your complimentary market valuation. Call 1-855-HeliCASTS, 1-855-735-5226, or email sales@helicopter.com. HeliCASTS. List it, sell it, done.
Yeah, absolutely. And everything is very complicated being so remote. So luckily, Valdez, we are on the road system, but hey, my entire fleet had floats on it. And so every inspection of the floats, every time you pop those, you got to send the bottle out. Well, now the bottle has to go ground because it's hazmat. And so it takes like 3 months to get it back. the doors. If a door breaks on a Robinson, you can't fix it. You have to send it to Robinson. So we're down for 3 months without a door. That's why I'm like a stickler. I train everyone so precisely on how to operate the doors, and I don't let anyone that's not trained touch a door.
Very smart. Yeah, doors can be complicated. We had jettison door issues at Maverick when I was flying there. Tell the passengers when you land, hey, don't open the door. I'll open the door, and don't pull that little orange knob down there. That's not a handle. If you pull that, the whole door is going to go. And at least once a month, someone was pulling the orange handle.
Oh my God. Yeah. And so if I had an interpreter, let's say we're doing a group tour of some Asian folks that don't speak a word of English, and one person, I'll go over the proper 135 stuff, the legal stuff, but I'll say, and don't touch the doors. And then they'll say it to everyone. And I'll say one more thing, and do not touch your door. And I'll do it 3 times.
Yeah. I would reiterate the doors and the sick-sack.
Oh yeah. Luckily in Alaska, people like Hawaii, I used to have people would get sick all the time, but in Alaska, you're usually looking up. You've got mountains or bears or things up, and it's cooler. The temperature is cooler, and very rarely do people get sick.
That helps.
But in Hawaii,
people in Vegas were getting sick all the time, especially in the spring. It was real bumpy, and it was hot, uncomfortable. They're all pissed off.
Move the microphone.
Oh yeah. I would just tell people, I'm like, look. If you feel like you're going to throw up, it's 99.9% that you're going to throw up. So just grab the bag. There's no shame. Okay. The shame is when you throw up all over the cockpit. That's a bad deal. Don't do that.
Mm-hmm.
Go in the bag. And I was probably 75-25. 25% of the time they didn't hit the bag. And now you got a mess. You're cleaning up barf after. My good buddy Tony had a guy behind him all over.
Oh,
he had to go home. He literally was contemplating throwing away his $1,000 Bose headset because he's like, this is ruined. I can never wear this again. And I'm like, Tony, go clean it. Don't throw away your $1,000 headset. I was lucky. I had my workout clothes and I didn't work out, so he was able to go and at least change and drive home in that. But running the business, what do you think is the kind of the most proud thing about starting that business and running it successfully for so long?
I would say our safety record was amazing. Being able to train new pilots, I brought in 1,000-hour flight instructors and trained them how to go out and deal with very inclement weather and learn how to long line. Seeing some of the guys and gals that I've trained throughout the years and what they're doing now I'm super proud of. Someone's out flying a K-Max, someone's out flying a Chinook, someone's out doing just all kinds of really cool, interesting jobs. So I got to be kind of the the door into utility flying for quite a few people.
Yeah, absolutely love that. It's so cool. And it's great because not a lot of operators will actually, take someone that's just hitting that 1,000-hour mark. But I would actually argue that it's a great idea because then you're getting to train that pilot, from your foundation, from how you want things to be done, because everyone has a little bit of a different expectation. People have different techniques that you should use or want to use for that type of job or that type of mission. And so I think it was probably a wise decision to do that. I started the podcast by saying that people just get to see the outcome of what you're doing now. And I feel like we're already coming up on an hour, which is crazy. There's been so much. So I don't even know if we did you full justice by really giving people the full scope, but I would be remiss in not talking about your presence now online and social media and the videos that you're doing and your popularity, your following. So obviously you sell your business. Truly, in my opinion, seems like it's like the American dream, right? Like you did your thing, you worked your butt off, you started a company, you took all that extreme crazy risk of running a company, let alone a freaking helicopter company. And now you're getting to really reap the rewards of that path. Having your own aircraft, a beautiful candy cane 505, flying all over the country in Alaska. I'm guessing the flying part was always kind of in the retirement plans, but was this whole social media thing, did that just kind of happen organically?
Totally. I mean, it actually started for me when I was working on a lot of the cell phone sites, and I'm spending 3-4 hours out there in the middle of nowhere with a beautiful yoga platform where I've landed the helicopter, and I started doing yoga pictures. So I would take my camera and I would just record myself doing yoga. And so anyway, I got really into social media then. It was my creative outlet. And it was also a great form of exercise. And so I don't even post on that account anymore just because yoga is online these days has changed and it's not fun for me anymore. I kind of just do things till they're fun. But then I got into sharing the real life stuff of what I'm doing flying helicopters. And it's my creative outlet. I love doing it. With my yoga account, I started to monetize and it got stressful. So I'm like, no, I don't sell things. I just share with no agenda except to share the joys of aviation, to share the art of it, of how to present it. And then I love to be able to share little tidbits of things that I've learned throughout the years, mistakes I've made that now I have a habit that I do it this way now, and this is why. And so I really like to share those things. And that's probably the most rewarding when I hear back from someone that like, hey, I saw that and I'm now training my pilots on how to land off airport by looking down at their skid, or just those little details.
Again, thanks to Lee for bringing in episode 100 with me at the Helicopter Podcast. THP, what's up? I can't believe it. It's been such an incredible year. As I get older, it seems like the years just go by faster and faster. And so I just tried to take a deep breath and realize how extremely fortunate I am to be having this podcast, to have this platform, to have my business. Helicopter absolutely killed it this year. Big shout out to them as they are a sponsor of this podcast. And a shout out to all of our sponsors, Robinson, Bell, PAG, VAI, Hillsboro Heli Academy. Special shout out to them. They recently actually helped me out with a super epic gender reveal. That was kind of the big news for 2024. My wife and I are expecting our first child. And if you haven't seen the video on Heli Halsey yet, go to my Instagram, Heli Halsey, make sure that you like it, and then check out the collaboration that I did with Hillsboro Heli as we did a gender reveal from the helicopter. Of course, I had to. It's like an obligation. That's the only way I could do it. So thank you to the sponsors and to MHM Publishing, Mike and Linda Reno. We love you. It's so fun to be doing this with you guys, individuals that just continue to innovate. And you have created such a wonderful team at the HeliCASTS. We couldn't do it without the editors as well, Oliver and Jen and Dana and everyone at MHM. Big shout out to David, too, at MHM. I can't pronounce his last name. I've been working with him for a year now. He's the longest last name ever. But he has been editing this podcast for nearly the entire year. He's so spot on. He's great at communication, and I couldn't do it without him. Derek, of course, at MHM. He's like the right hand over there, and he's been just such a big support in helping with sponsorship. So, again, just to the entire MHM family, we love you guys. To my HeliCAST podcasters, John, Jason, and Val, and of course, Jack. Just love doing this with you guys. What an incredible thing we're doing. And to our listeners, thank you guys so much for making 2024 so special. Hey, we can only go up from here. 2025 is going to be awesome. Helicopter Podcast out. Happy New Year.
We know you love helicopters. That's why you're here. But are you ready to make it a career? Hillsboro Heli Academy has been making dreams of flying helicopters come true since 1980. Visit us at flyhaa.com and dream big.
Thank you to our sponsor, Robinson Helicopter Company, the choice for unrivaled safety and reliability so you can accomplish any mission with confidence. For more than half a century, Robinson has been at the forefront of the helicopter industry. From the R-22 to the R-66 turbine, Robinson makes helicopters accessible so more people can accomplish more missions. Climb higher. For additional information, visit www.robinsonheli.com.
This podcast is brought to you by HeliCASTS. Tired of listings that go nowhere? Exhausted by tire kickers who waste your time? Don't sell your helicopter alone. HeliCASTS handles the entire process from start to finish. So, if your helicopter is sat too long waiting for a buyer, contact the team at HeliCASTS today for your complimentary market valuation. Call 1-855-HeliCASTS, 1-855-735-5226, or email sales@helicopter.com. HeliCASTS. List it, sell it, done.